X and I had way too young. We're friendly co-parents. One big rule we share is if our daughter breaks something, she pays for it. Now, sis and I are the only grandkids. Aunt never married. Instead, she worked with GMA and GPA at their Seams Tri store, and took it over when they retired. Sis's girlfriend proposed last year. GPA offered to make FSIL a custom suit, which she was over the moon about. GMA had me ask Sis what her dream dress was and record the convo. Sis, thinking it was just between us, told me in great detail what her dream dress was, though said it was way too expensive. So she would get something much cheaper. Well, a few months later GMA surprised Sis with her dream wedding dress. It FOT perfectly and everyone cried. Sadly, GMA recently passed away, which hit us all hard. Sis was devastated, but decided that the dress meant GMA would still be there with us at the wedding. The issue comes in with C. She's very large, much larger than Sis. 3 days ago, we decided to go visit Sis and see how she was doing. It was great, but then C asked if she could try on the dress. Sis politely said no. C made a face, but dropped it. Later, we decided to go grab dinner. Sis and I went to pick up our orders, but C decided to stay and play with Sis's dog. We got back, and the dress was destroyed. C had apparently tried to get it on, popping some seams, and got stuck. Instead of waiting for help, she cut her way out. The dress was hacked to bits. Sis was devastated and asked us to leave. I grounded C and called Aunt with some pictures, asking if it could be saved. She said there was no. She said she'd make a new one, but it wasn't the same. Then she dropped the bomb on me. GMA had hand-sewed most of the dress, used super expensive fabric, and put almost 500 hours in making that dress, since it was the only family wedding we'd have. In total, the dress cost $12,000, give or take. C has about $15,000 saved from various jobs, as well as winning writing competitions. This was supposed to help her in college. I took her to the bank and set in motion transferring all the funds, since as her parent I still have control over it. $12,000 to Aunt to pay for the new dress. $3,000 to my sister's wedding, as an emotional distress tax. I explained exactly why this was happening to C, but she sobbed the entire time, asking what was she supposed to do for college and saying it wasn't her fault. I told her she could get a job if she didn't get a scholarship, and it was her fault for trying on the dress after she'd been told no, and for not waiting until we got back. A few popped seams could have been fixed. Hacking the dress to pieces couldn't. C told my ex, and while she agreed C was in the wrong after the full story, said I shouldn't have ruined her future for a free dress. I reminded her of our rule, and she still thinks I'm wrong. $3,000, that was to make up to my sister that C destroyed the last gift our dead grandma ever gave her. I consider that part of the price of destroying the dress, since even if Aunt remakes it, it's lost a great deal of its sentiment value. I pointed out how young we has her because I wanted to explain how a 31-year-old has a 16-year-old kid. I do not resent having her. She's the best thing I've ever done. I also brought up C's size because Sis has Crohn's disease and thus is very tiny. The dress was made her for size, and C is much larger than Sis. I love C as she is, but just holding the dress up, it was clear it wouldn't fit. The money was C's have fun at college money, not her college fund. My ex and I are paying for whatever scholarships don't. When she was asking what she would do for college, she was asking what did she do for fun and to buy things we didn't pay for. I got off the phone with my ex. I sent her the pictures, and she freaked. She apparently didn't believe me when I said it had been hacked apart, and believed it was just a few torn seams. She was pretty much on my side after. She told me that she spent the day badgering our daughter, asking her why she did what she did. And finally she cracked and said she was mad that grandma wasn't alive to make her a dress, and that it was unfair. My sister got a free beautiful dress as a reminder when my daughter got nothing, despite the many things she was given after the funeral. She tried it on, took it off when the seams popped, and then in anger hacked it apart. If she couldn't have a dress from grandma, no one could. Her own words. Honestly, knowing she did it on purpose has just made things worse. The fact that she could be so. I got my son a $7,000 motorcycle for his 18th birthday this past June. My son is obsessed with automobile and loves motorcycles. In his room he has plenty of models and posters of motorcycles of all types. His bio dad passed away when he was just 12. Now I'm married to my current husband and he has kids of his own. My husband has always been against my son's interest in motorcycles. He thinks I'm encouraging him to be reckless, distracting him from school and by extension his future, and spoiling him and blowing away money by spending $7,000 on a motorcycle. This caused some tension between him and my son, so I told him to stop complaining about it. Around 2 weeks ago, my son's motorcycle went missing. We opened a police report but nothing came out of it. It just disappeared. My husband had a smirk on his face the entire time, just walking around saying, "I told you so. You just wasted your money." This was unbearable to hear, to be quite honest. My mother-in-law visited few days ago. She was talking about the other house my husband owns and mentioned seeing a motorcycle, one that's similar to the one that we lost in my husband's carriage while she was cleaning it. She goes to clean that house weekly even though it's empty. My husband plans on giving it to his kids as inheritance. I was puzzled. I asked if she was certain, but she showed me a photo she took of it which confirmed that it was indeed my son's motorcycle. I immediately rushed to call my husband and confront him about it. He admitted that he took and hid the motorcycle in his garage as a last resort after me and his stepson kept brushing him and his thoughts off about the $7,000 being spent on something unnecessary and that could cause issues. I blew up at him demanding he return it. He refused and told me he had been considering selling it and giving the money back to me so I could use it wisely this time. I told him I was serious and that I'd call the police. He literally said, "This is a family matter and cops can't do shit about it." I had enough. I called the cops soon as I ended the call with him. The motorcycle was found and returned, but my husband had to be taken in since there was an open file about the motorcycles going missing. He was let go eventually, but he was livid with me. He came home yelling about how awful what I did was and how crazy my behavior was. I refused to engage in the argument, but he told his entire family about it and they judged me for calling the police on my own husband, even though I already asked him to return it. He said he was just looking out for my son and that one day we'll realize that he was right, but only when it's too late. My son isn't speaking to me or my husband. I feel horrible about the whole situation and am starting to think I handled this the wrong way. My name is Mary, and I'm expecting my first baby with my husband. This is the first grandchild in the family, in-laws, and they said that if the baby's a boy then we'll give him my father-in-law's name. He's dead due to cancer. I had no problem with that. This happened before we found out the gender of the baby. My husband and his family had me do things like attend prayers and do other rituals before the reveal at the doctor's. I didn't like that but went with it to keep the peace. DR appointment came, and it turned out to be a girl. My husband cried in the car, then turned his phone off to hide from his family, then finally told them. His mom and the others made their frustration and disappointment clear, which bothered me cause my daughter deserves to be celebrated, but they ghosted me for days, then started coming over and visiting, constantly referring to my daughter as my son, claiming the results were false and basically pretending it's a boy. I had severe fights with them after they refused to stop it, and my husband sided with them despite seeing how wrong and unreasonable what they were doing was. We didn't speak for a while. Sister-in-law called to apologize, then informed me she arranged for a baby shower for me. I was so excited and happy, but when I arrived I saw blue balloons, blue cake with father-in-law's name/decorations around. I was so confused I had to sit down. Sister-in-law explained they were still hoping the gender results are false and it's a boy. I looked at my husband and he agreed with her. I lost my temper and yelled at them all, calling them delusionals and telling them to stop treating my daughter like she's unwanted and act like she doesn't exist by throwing a party for their imaginary grandson. Mother-in-law break down crying. I took my bag and walked out immediately. They started yelling and my husband followed me outside and started arguing about how I insulted his family and his dad's memory by acting like that. I told him to wake up and see the insanity in his family's behavior. He said they needed time to process the fact that it's a girl not a boy as they expected, and insisted I play along and they'll soon get over it. I said absolutely not and demanded he take me home. He said no, so I called an Uber and left. He was fuming. He called 15 times, then texted that he won't be coming home till I get my ass over and apologize for ruining everything and accusing them of being mentally unstable. I haven't responded yet. He's constantly pressuring me to get right with his family before we even talk about anything else. My boyfriend and I have been studying together at university, and while he is studying part-time, working part-time and engaging heavily in his amateur acting career, while I am studying full-time and working part-time. We share one subject at uni together. On top of this, he is trying to pick up another hobby while looking after his grandfather, who is in his final stages, in a nursing home. As you can imagine, for the past 6 months he has very little time to cut out of his week to spend with me. None, in fact. I have been fine with this for the most part. I have been driving 45 minutes 3+ times a week to get to his house so we can steal a few hours together, but he doesn't have time to spare. This is an inconvenience I can live with. However, he has been asking me to do a lot of other things too. He has frustrated me multiple times with demands that I visit his grandfather, who does not recognize me, for 2 hours, which turns into 4.5 hours. Or help him with a family matter, which lasts 5 hours or so. Every time this happens, he promises he will drive me home. And every time he says he doesn't have time anymore and I need to catch the train home, 1 hour plus walking. I have spoken to him about how this is unfairly affecting me, and he seems to take it on board, but just forgets again the next time he needs something. After forcing me to spend $600 plus on his best friend's destination wedding, the weekend before we both had 2 major exams due, he demands that we switch our exam times because he didn't spend enough time studying and he needed the extra day. I concede and he squanders his spare day sleeping because he needed it. I take my classes very seriously and I feel very over by his demands. I understand that family matters / best friends are important things, but he has eaten into hours and hours of my study time, and my grades are dropping. Not only that, but it's affecting my emotional health also. I have expressed to him that it is affecting me badly, but he tells me I'm being very unsympathetic and selfish. What's more is that I have about $10,000 in savings. He recently became aware of this and has demanded that I help him pay his bills because we're a team. He is broke. I helped him with a few, but drew the line after $500 because he is very irresponsible with money and there's only so much I can pour out before it seriously affects me. He is also demanding that I give him access to my bank account because we are in this together, and he wants to marry me one day, so we should start sharing now. I don't really know what to do. I want to be a good girlfriend and do what he needs me to do right now, but it's beginning to affect my health. I purchased a 3-bedroom condo in Toronto, Canada 5 years ago when I was in my 2nd year of medical residency. Soon after the purchase, I rented one of the rooms to my roommate to offset the costs of the mortgage. I live in 1 room, she lives in the 2nd, and the 3rd is my study / office. She has been a great roommate from the beginning. We aren't necessarily friends, as in we don't do things together for fun, but we get along exceptionally well. The entire roommate / tenant relationship has gone swimmingly up until recently. A couple of weeks ago, my roommate broke the news to me that she is pregnant. The father was a fling of hers, who does not want anything to do with the child. My roommate has decided she wants to keep the child anyways, and raise it on her own. To me that seems like a huge challenge, and I admire her for it. The issue is, while I don't necessarily dislike children, I have no desire to live with a baby. While the condo is a fair size, I will most definitely be woken up by the babies crying at night. My condo is also where I like to come home to and relax, like a haven after a long workday. And the idea of coming home to a baby honestly seems absolutely chaotic. Especially since this isn't my own child, i.e. one that my girlfriend and I decided to have / was mentally prepared for. As difficult as it was for me to do this, I told her essentially what I've written here, and that it would be best if she finds somewhere else to live. I am not rushing her out or anything like that. I have given her 6 months notice. Since any later than that will come too close to the birth. She was honestly quite taken aback by this, and thought that I was being cruel. Her primary concern is that rent has gone up substantially in this city since she signed on with me. I haven't increased her rent since she moved in, so she's essentially paying 2015 rent. She works as a waitress, and will likely need to find a lesser apartment to keep within the same budget. A couple of other considerations are that she was out of work while restaurants were closed, but I did waive her rent for that period. All of the furniture is also mine, aside from her bedroom, so she would need to figure something out on that front as well. Aside from all of the child expenses. I understand her position, and I feel horrible about the situation, but I honestly can't do it. I haven't been able to give life much thought lately, as work has been quite busy. Firstly, I have a friend in real estate, and I'm going to see if they can help her try to find some affordable listings. Secondly, as I don't plan to take on another tenant after her, and can afford to do this anyway, I have decided I'm going to waive her rent for the remainder of the tenancy. This will hopefully give her a bit of a boost to get on her feet. I consulted an attorney to be 1000% sure, and this is perfectly legal. Since I live in the unit, the eviction laws are much more lenient. Her baby will become a toddler, and a toddler eventually becomes a school-age child. Will it really be any better to do this later on? When I came home from work today, I told her that I wanted to discuss the overall situation. Before I even began, she actually apologized to me for how she spoke to me, and for expecting that I would be okay for her to raise her child here. I told her that her apology is totally unnecessary, as her reaction was completely understandable considering the uncertainty of her future. I then told her that I would waive her rent for the REMA,